The decline of organized religion isn't happening through sudden explosions, but through a slow and steady unraveling that has been building for decades. What was once considered untouchable, churches, temples, and sacred doctrines, is now being questioned at every level. Places of worship that were once packed with believers now stand half empty. In developed countries especially, younger generations are increasingly distancing themselves from traditional faiths. The values that once allowed religion to maintain its influence, control over knowledge, morality, and community, are weakening in a modern world shaped by individual freedom, education, and global connectivity. As religion loses its monopoly on truth and morality, it also loses the foundation that sustained it for thousands of years. This isn't just a decline in membership, it's a collapse of cultural authority and social power that once seemed unshakable. For centuries, organized religion maintained its dominance through control over three powerful domains: knowledge, morality, and community. These pillars gave it the ability to define truth, dictate what was right and wrong, and shape how people connected with one another. But today, each of these foundations is being dismantled. Knowledge is no longer monopolized by religious authorities. It's accessible to anyone with an internet connection or a library card. Morality is increasingly shaped by human rights, ethical philosophy, and collective reasoning, not by ancient scriptures. And community, once tied to physical places of worship, has expanded into digital networks, social movements, and secular spaces. When these pillars collapse, religion loses the power to command loyalty. Without control over what people know, how they think, and how they come together, organized religion is no longer the central force it once was. Religious institutions once held a sacred image, symbols of moral authority and spiritual guidance. But over time, repeated scandals, corruption, and abuses of power have eroded that trust. From financial misconduct to sexual abuse cover-ups, these aren't isolated incidents. They're systemic patterns that reveal how many institutions protect their reputation over truth. When an organization that claims to represent divine morality consistently fails to meet even basic ethical standards, people stop believing in its authority. This growing skepticism isn't just about specific leaders. It's about the integrity of the entire system. Once trust is broken, it's nearly impossible to rebuild, and religion's moral power begins to fade. For centuries, organized religion held enormous influence over politics and culture. Kings sought the blessing of priests, laws were written in the name of gods, and entire societies revolved around religious approval. Faith was once a universal language of power. But today, that dominance is fading. Political leaders no longer need religious institutions to gain legitimacy. In many countries, it's now the religious leaders who cling to politics to stay relevant. This reversal exposes their weakened position. Globalization has also stripped religion of its claim to universality. People can now easily see countless belief systems that contradict one another. When every faith declares itself the only truth, but none can prove it, their universal authority collapses. Religion is no longer shaping society from above. It is struggling to survive within it. Rituals once formed the backbone of organized religion. Weddings, funerals, festivals, and daily prayers tied communities together and gave faith a powerful presence in everyday life. These ceremonies didn't just express belief, they reinforced obedience and identity, keeping religion deeply woven into cultural traditions. But in the modern world, this grip is weakening. More people are holding weddings and funerals outside religious institutions, choosing personal or secular ceremonies instead. Religious holidays are increasingly treated as cultural events, not sacred obligations. When rituals lose their exclusivity, religion loses its cultural stronghold. It no longer defines life's most meaningful moments. It simply becomes one option among many. This quiet shift erodes its power more effectively than any open rebellion. Faced with rapid decline, many religious institutions are trying to reinvent themselves to stay relevant. Churches transform into community centers, temples host concerts and cafes, and religious leaders embrace social media campaigns to attract younger generations. But these efforts reveal a deeper truth. Faith itself is no longer the main reason people participate. Religion is forced to market itself like a product, not a sacred authority. Its focus shifts from spiritual conviction to entertainment and branding, proving that its traditional power is fading. This kind of adaptation may delay collapse, but it also exposes the fragility of the system. An institution that must constantly rebrand to survive is no longer shaping the world. It's struggling to keep up with it. The rise of technology has shattered the monopoly of religious narratives. With just a few clicks, anyone can fact-check holy texts, expose historical contradictions, or uncover hidden political motives behind religious institutions. The internet has made information more transparent than ever, stripping away the aura of mystery and unquestionable authority. Younger generations, growing up in a connected world, value critical thinking over blind faith. They no longer accept answers simply because God said so. Instead, they seek logic, evidence, and personal meaning. Technology doesn't just provide knowledge, it empowers individuals to think for themselves. And in a world where truth is accessible to everyone, religions built on fear, secrecy, or unquestioned dogma are rapidly losing their grip. As society evolves, many traditional religious values clash with modern ethical standards. Teachings that once seemed sacred now appear outdated, from rigid gender roles and intolerance of diversity to restrictions on personal freedom and scientific progress. These contradictions undermine the moral authority religions once held. When religious doctrines justify inequality, discrimination, or violence, they reveal their inability to adapt to a more just and humane world. While humanity moves forward, many religious systems remain anchored in ancient thinking. This growing gap makes their influence weaker with each generation, as more people turn to universal human values rather than outdated dogma. As science advances and globalization connects humanity, people are no longer confined to a single belief system. Knowledge, evidence, and diverse perspectives challenge the old frameworks that once claimed to hold the ultimate truth. Science offers real explanations for phenomena once attributed to divine forces, from the origins of the universe to the workings of the human mind. Meanwhile, globalization fosters cultural exchange, encouraging critical thinking and empathy beyond religious boundaries. In this new era, meaning is no longer handed down from religious authorities. It is something individuals can explore and create for themselves. Purpose is found in human connection, knowledge, creativity, and shared responsibility for the future, not in ancient myths or rigid dogma. The decline of traditional religion is not just a temporary phase. It's a structural collapse rooted in deep societal transformation. When its core pillars of fear, authority, and exclusivity weaken, the entire system loses its foundation. Unlike past periods of doubt, this shift is driven by education, technology, global communication, and a more empowered generation. These forces are not cyclical. They are evolutionary, pushing humanity toward a new era of consciousness. Even as some institutions try to adapt or modernize, the old framework cannot fully survive in a world that values freedom, evidence, and personal meaning over obedience and dogma. What we are witnessing is not a temporary decline. It's an irreversible transformation. The future will not be defined by the dominance of religious authority, but by the liberation of human thought and agency. As the influence of organized religion continues to fade, individuals will no longer need a divine intermediary to define morality, purpose, or truth. This shift opens the door to a more self-aware, empathetic, and intellectually free society, where values are shaped by shared humanity rather than dogma. Communities can be built on mutual respect, reason, and personal responsibility, not fear or control. Freed from the weight of religious power, people can create new systems of meaning, more flexible, inclusive, and rooted in reality. This isn't the end of spirituality, but the beginning of a new chapter, where belief is a personal choice, not a tool of authority. The decline of traditional religious power is not a tragedy. It's a turning point in human evolution. For centuries, religion shaped laws, morality, and culture, often through fear, control, and unquestioned authority. But now, as people awaken to their own capacity for reason and compassion, the foundations of that system are crumbling. This is more than just the fall of an institution. It is the rise of individual freedom, of a world where morality is built on empathy, evidence, and shared humanity, not on ancient dogma. The collapse of religious control is not the end of meaning. It's the beginning of a more conscious, responsible, and liberated civilization. When fear fades and critical thinking takes its place, humanity doesn't lose its soul, it reclaims it.